In June, amid the golden fields, I saw a groundhog lying dead. Dead lay he, my senses shook, and mind outshot our naked frailty. There, lowly in the vigor of summer, his form began its senseless change, and made my senses waver dim, seeing nature ferocious in him, inspecting close his maggot's might, and seething cauldron of his being, half with loathing, half with a strange love. I poked him with an angry stick. The fever rose, became a flame, and vigor circumscribed the skies, immense energy in the sun. And through my frame a sunless trembling, my stick had done nor good nor harm. Then stood I, silent in the day, watching the object as before, and kept my reverence for knowledge, trying for control to be still, to quell the passion of blood, until I had bent down on my knees, praying for joy in the sight of decay. And so I left, and I returned, in autumn stripped of eye, to see a sap gone out of the groundhog, but the bony, sodden hope remained. But the year had lost its meaning, and in intellectual chains I lost both love and loathing. Mirrored up in the wall of wisdom, another summer took the fields again, massive and burning and full of life. But when I chanced upon the spot, there was only a little hair left, and bones bleaching in the sunlight, beautiful as architecture. I watched them like a geometer, and cut a walking stick from the birch. It has been 3 years now. There is no sign of the groundhog. I stood there in the whirling summer, my hand capped a withered heart, and thought of China and of Greece, of Alexander in his tent, of Montague in his tower, of St. Teresa in her wild land. This is The Groundhog by Richard Eberhart. The speaker is a curious and caring man. He connects with nature, and he's just frustrated at life's fragility and interested in what death will eventually bring. The speaker is speaking to the general public, just letting them know that death is eventual, it's inevitable. The setting takes place over time, so it starts out in June during the summer, and then it shifts to autumn, and then it shifts yet again to the next summer, and then 3 years from the first time he encounters the groundhog. The speaker's purpose is to reflect on morality and the solemn idea of death, but also the inevitability and the beauty within it. I found 2 themes in the poem. One being how fragile life is, even talking about our naked frailty, just how fragile human life is, and then the other being the inevitability of death, which he comes to the realization that death is going to happen no matter what, when he starts to see as the groundhog's decaying, and then he's eventually gone. The poem is structured as a story, so it starts out with him running into the groundhog, feeling sad, feeling angry, and then he leaves. He comes back, he sees the groundhog again, he sees the gross, bony hulk that's left. He leaves again, he comes back, and then during this summer, he actually sees the beautiful bones bleaching in sunlight, and then later on, 3 years after he first encounters the groundhog, he sees the groundhog is gone. So it's structured as a story that represents the shifts in tone. The tone of the poem starts out as solemn and angry over the death of this groundhog, finding him dead as he decays. And then it shifts right about here during the next summer when he chances upon the spot again and he sees the beautiful bones bleaching in the sunlight and he watches them. And then he sees this area again and there's just no sign of the groundhog anymore. And this is when he starts to accept the death and he sees that there's actually some beauty in the death and eventually it's going to happen. There's also specific diction within the poem. Frailty just represents how fragile really are, the fragility or the theme, the fragile life. Then he speaks of the fever arising and becoming a flame. The flame and the fever just represent his anger. And then the immense energy in the sun, you can see it pounding. This is also visual imagery. And then he also chooses words such as the bony, sodden hulk. This just, you view the hulk as gross and decaying and meat left over. But then eventually he uses words such as bleaching in the sunlight, or bleaching, and beautiful, which show how this gross thing turned into this beautiful leftover from the death. There's also figurative language within here. There is imagery. Visual imagery is one of the biggest parts of the poem. He speaks of the golden fields, the groundhog as he describes it, with its maggots, and he can see it as it grows gross. He also describes poking him, how it doesn't do anything bad, but the visual action of poking him. And then he discusses, yet again, the bony, sodden hulk. This is also imagery, visual imagery. You can see the gross leftovers. And then the massive burning summer, which just describes this beautiful summer that's just full of life, which is also irony because he's speaking about the groundhog's death. And then there's also personification. There's also sound devices, such as him standing there silent in the day. Right here, it shows his solemn tone of the poem. Just as a funeral, you stand there silent. He's standing there silent, reflecting on what has happened. And then also praying can be a sound device, as you can hear the prayers, hear the sadness as he prays for joy when he sees the decay. Then also the whirling summer. Whirling can be both visual and auditory because you can hear the birds. Whirling kind of just represents the the acceptance that he now feels as he's standing there yet again in the whirling summer, in the beautiful continuing